Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast in association with eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday, the 8th of February, and you're joined by myself, Philip Nuthard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. Now, Phil, we're very close to revealing the identity of our special guest, aren't we?
We are. And
yeah, we've teased it a bit this week on social media.
We have, and I think he's a name that is well known in the industry, isn't he? So it's been a pleasure to have him back on the podcast.
Yeah, but we'll keep the suspense building for a couple more minutes. So headlines this week are from Motor Trader, AM Online, Auto Retail Agenda, the Financial Times and BBC News. So stories this week include the new car and van registrations for January. Is the government's petrol and diesel ban now just 15 years away? We're looking at how 1 in 10 car buyers say they want to go electric with their next purchase. Will Nissan use Brexit as an opportunity to ramp up UK sales? We've got a roundup of top bosses on the move, and stay tuned for our exclusive interview at the end of the show with John O'Hanlon, CEO of Waylands Automotive. So, yeah, it's all revealed now.
Yep, and great interview. Absolutely fantastic interview. You wouldn't expect anything less from John, would you?
Yeah, he's on absolute top form, so do stay tuned for that.
So we've got our first story, and obviously we've had the first lot of new car figure results and van results for January, and everybody's sort of eagerly awaited those coming in. But unfortunately, as many might have expected, we have seen a decline, haven't we, in the first month of the year, which, I think there was probably some expectation of that with where we saw the rise in December, where there was potentially some activity around pre-reg tactical registrations ahead of the CAFE legislation that became in effect on the 1st of January that we have mentioned once or twice on the podcast. But very interesting results, particularly around sort of the hybrid market and the fleet and business market in terms of what's happened there.
Yeah, so the headline figures are that the market was down 7.3% in January, and we saw declines in private demand of 14%, while fleet was down 2.2%. So in all, 149,279 vehicles were registered over the course of the month, but that compares with 161,000 in January 2019. Within the figures, registrations of new diesels fell for what is now the 34th consecutive month. They were down 36%. But the story that we're highlighting is from AM Online, and the headline there is UK hybrid car sales climbed 21% in January despite new car market decline. So it's a story of two halves. It's the AFV market, did grow by 21%. So high demand there for hybrids, which were up 20%. PHEVs, they've recovered. They were up 111%, while battery electric vehicles were up 203%. So, we've reported on this for the last few months, how there is a shift going on, albeit from low numbers, but there is a noticeable shift taking place.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's I think it's the lowest figure that we've seen since 2013, when the figure was 143,643. So we are, as we've been saying for some time, on that sort of downside of the bell curve. But again, it's quite a big drop from what we've seen in previous Januaries. So we've been on a decline since the high of 2017, which we saw 174,000 registrations, followed by 163, 161 last year, you quoted, and then 149 this year. So again, I think really what we said earlier around that CAFE legislation coming in, some of the supply constraints that we've got entering the sector, and what we're going to talk about shortly as well, in terms of that sort of change of the banning of petrol and diesels on the horizon, and including some of the hybrids. We're starting to see this sort of fuel mix start to shift as manufacturers try and meet certain legislations and sort of work around that marketplace. So it's going to be challenging, isn't it? I think the key on this one is, again, I think we said it a number of times last year, didn't we, that you can't really look at month on month in isolation. You've got to look over a longer period of time at those trends, and we're going to have to really look at the whole of Q1 to see what the first quarter is going to look like compared to last year.
Yeah. Now, I've whenever the SMMT figures come out, I always print out the A to Z of the manufacturers and just go through very quickly with a couple of highlighters to identify the main winners and losers. And it is very, very revealing in January, because there's some big drops, and there's some sizable increases as well. So starting with the brands that dropped in the month, Dacia, they were down 50%. Hyundai, and these are really brands that we expect to be see growth from, and these are all sorts of significant dips. So Hyundai, they were down 30%. Kia down 24%, Mazda down 25%, Mini down 31%, Suzuki down 40%, and Vauxhall down 24%. Now, there will be mitigating circumstances, I'm sure, for all those brands, and a lot of it will be down to availability of the right mix of products. And you've already talked about the CAFE legislation, which means that all brands will be focusing on their lower emission vehicles to hit their average targets. So they're the losers. Winners for the month, DS, they were up 12%. Jaguar up 9%, Lexus were up 44%. So it'd be interesting to find out what's going on at Lexus there. Mitsubishi, they were up 16.5%, and that's purely for cars. And Nissan, who will return to fairly soon, they were up 18%.
So again, just like you say, some circumstances surrounding some of those figures there that, some of them will be natural growth, some of them will be sort of pre-reg tactical registration growth, and some of the losers will be because they pulled product into December, or they just haven't got enough product currently in the UK market to meet demand. So again, interesting figures, and I think we're going to have to see it for the full quarter. So I think you've got the LCV results as well, haven't you, Curtis? Yeah,
I have. So from the SMMT, LCV registrations for January were up 6%. So that took the markets to 23,557 units, which is up 1,100 on January last year. Within that, registrations for small vans were up 26%, mid-sized vans were up 42%, while pickups were down 10%. So a good start there for the LCV market.
Definitely. And moving on to the next big story, and this has definitely hit the headlines this week, hasn't it? And we've got the story from BBC News, and touching on it a bit then with the SMMT figures. But the headline is that petrol and diesel car sales ban brought forward by 2035. And it's an interesting move by the government, this one, and it's actually been challenged by the SMMT. One, in terms of bringing it forward by the 5 years, and two, around the inclusion of hybrids as well in this as well. So it's created a bit of a storm within the network this week.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Picked up a lot of coverage. The SMMT are not very happy at all. And as you say, it covers hybrids and plug-in hybrids. And, as transitionary technology, there is a place for hybrids and PHEVs, but it's getting the government to actually acknowledge this. So this seems to be the challenge. So the story quotes government experts who said 2040 would be too late if the UK wants to achieve its target of emitting virtually zero carbon by 2015, hence the suggestion of bringing it forward to 2035. But There is a period of consultation, so this is really where the SMMT and other interested parties will be sitting down with the government to try and thrash out, something perhaps more achievable.
Yeah. No, I think it's certainly. I mean, this isn't. The whole thing finished, is it? I mean, there's going to be a lot to happen with this one yet, so it's probably one that we'll be keeping a close eye on as it develops. As you say, the SMMT and other associations will be consulting with the government in terms of what impact that will have for the automotive sector, the challenges for the automotive sector for that to be achieved, and nobody's taking away why. It needs to be done. Everybody understands that, but it's about that achievability, should we say, of the network being able to get to that level. Because 2035 isn't actually that long away from.
It's just 15 years, and whilst we all agree that we've got to achieve these targets, they've got to be realistic. They've to have that achievability.
Yeah, you look at that, the EV infrastructure, the network, and everything else that's happening. Is 15 years long enough for that to be done? That's the big question, and certainly one that the SMMT are challenging at the minute. So again, one that we'll be watching very closely indeed. So again, sticking with the fuel types, and this is a story that's in motortrader.com, and this is dealers to see tipping point for EVs next year. And on the face of it, it's a fairly obvious story, particularly on the back of the previous headlines that we've just been talking about there. But this is from a consumer perspective, and this is from some survey research that Deloitte have done, haven't they, from their consumer part of the business.
Yeah, so they've researched 1,200 driving age consumers for their global automotive consumer survey, although I think the results are UK specific. So they found that 1 in 10 of this sample said that their next purchase will be an electric vehicle. So it's showing the purchasing intent, and that's obviously positive news. And they go back and compare year on year to show how that demand has grown. But of course, a lot of this is down to, and we've said this a number of times on the podcast, it's down to availability of vehicles and affordability, because consumers being researched asked whether or not their next purchase will be an EV. They may not know the price of an EV, so they may say yes without knowing the sort of price implications. So as a survey showing intent, it's interesting, but it would have been nice to have seen a bit more about, how much would you be prepared to spend on your EV?
Yeah, and it's it's having that the infrastructure to support it. I mean, I was in a conversation this week about myself in terms of my next choice of vehicle, and I'd like an EV. I'd even like a plug-in EV, although government's trying to ban those by 2035. But I haven't got the infrastructure, obviously, where I live, or the network that I live within nearby to be able to do what I need to do in terms of a daily commute and my job requirement to be able to do it. So again, things have got to change, haven't they? I've got the desirability to own one, but actually it's unrealistic for my geographic location that I'll be able to own one. So again, we'll see how this one moves forward.
Yeah, so you're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast in association with eBay Motors Group, the only weekly podcast serving the car retailing sector, and available online at motortraderadio.com and by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Deezer, and SoundCloud.
So we're heading back to the Financial Times now, and they seem to have followed the Nissan story for some time now, haven't they, in one guise or another. And this is about that Nissan drafts plan to double down on UK under hard Brexit. What's your thoughts about this one? It's an interesting story, isn't it?
It's fascinating, and it's worth pointing out that there's a spokesman from Nissan Europe in the story who denies any such contingency plans exist. but it looks as though it's based on well-informed knowledge there, and they've been talking to some people within Nissan by looks of things. So the gist of the story is that the plan would see Nissan, in the case of a hard Brexit, really focus on the UK and pull out of, because it produces vehicles in France with Renault. I think the Micra is produced at a Renault plant, and it has some van production in Europe, but the rest of the production obviously is all based in Sunderland. So this plan would see Nissan more or less shutting shop on Europe and concentrating on the UK market and targeting a 20% market share. So 1 in 5 new cars sold would be a Nissan. So this is pretty bold thinking. And as I say, we don't know if this is true, but Nissan will be kicking around all sorts of scenarios at the moment, and I would certainly envisage them looking at options like this. Why wouldn't they want to keep their options open? Yeah. But it would be pretty bold if they went ahead with this.
And as you say, this has come from 2 people. It's quoted in the discussions that said that the contingency plan drawn up late last year would see Nissan close its struggling Barcelona van facility and stop manufacturing in France there. So again, there's no smoke without fire with these kind of things, is there? So again, will be very, very interesting, as you say, what actually has been said and what that contingency plan is for the UK market, depending on the outcome in 12 months' time.
Yeah, and the story was did break in the FT, but it was picked up by everyone. It was all over the place this week.
And you can see why. So yes. What we have got, before heading over to the interview of this week, so we've got some appointments, haven't we? And it's quite the sort of all hit this week. So 1 or 2 changes. So the first one is Lookers targets improved operational execution under new CEO, aren't they? So there's been changes at the top there at Lookers.
Yeah, so this was reported by AM Online, and this sees the appointment of Mark Raban as its new chief executive and Cameron White as chief operating officer. So these appointments fill the top slots vacated by CEO Andy Bruce and COO Nigel McMinn, who left the business in November last year. So Mark joined the board back in July 1918. 1918?
1918. It's been a while.
Wow, where did that come from? July 2019, even, as chief financial officer. And, he has nearly 30 years of what was described here as multi-channel retailing experience. Before joining the group, he was CFO at Marshalls. So, that's a key appointment there. And Cameron Wade, he joined Lookers in December 2016 as franchise director of the group's Audi business, and listeners will know him from previous roles as commercial director and managing director at Peter Vardy.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next one, and this is a step down, isn't it? So this is again sticking with AM, but Inchcape chief exec Stefan Bonnard resigns post at the AM100 PLC. So Stefan has stepped down from Inchcape.
Yeah, and the reason he's stepped down is that he's taken up the post of chief exec at Imperial Brands. So we don't know who will be succeeding him, but yeah, that's an interesting move there.
Exactly. And then the next one has been an appointment, which is in motortrader.com, and Porsche Retail Group appoints a new MD. And great move, this. Great move. I mean, he's been with the business for some time, and Adam Flint has been appointed as the new managing director following the retirement of Aid Smith there.
Yeah, and as you say, he's been with the business since 2015, when he was a dealer principal at Porsche Centre in Guildford. But before that, he'd been with Harwood's and Ford Retail. So, good background there.
Exactly. And then the changes that we have mentioned some of the things that did happen just before Christmas, and this is a little short story on Auto Retail Agenda that came out on Sunday evening, and this is where Sytner have appointed the new car shop boss, and this is following the changes with Jonathan Dunkley just before Christmas, with James Dunkley as well. So again, they've put Mr. Hurley, who has been appointed as the new boss, Nigel Hurley there, who has worked with Sytner's for 21 years, and he's come across from the divisional role as managing director for the Sytner, BMW and Mini operations there. So again, bringing that franchise experience into the car shop operation is going to be an interesting one for Car Shop Group.
Yeah, and continuity is essential there. So, as you say, a sort of Sytner stalwart there, and that was a key position that needed to be filled. So, we'll see what happens with the car shop now. Interesting business there, and we'll see how that develops.
Exactly. So, we can't wait any longer. So, let's head over now to the interview that we've recorded with John O'Hanlon, and this is an absolute superb interview, so please stay tuned and listen to fantastic insight and engagement there from John O'Hanlon.
Today, we're delighted to welcome John O'Hanlon to the show. By way of a quick background, John started his automotive career back in 1990 as a motor retail manager at Grant Thornton. One of his clients was the Newbury-based Ridgeway Group, which he subsequently joined in 1998 as financial controller. He became FD in 2000 and CEO in 2007. The business grew into a highly successful and acquisitive regional group before being sold to Marshalls in 2017. 16 months later, John announced the launch of Waylands Automotive with a new site opening in Reading. He and his team have since grown the business into a 4-site Solus Volvo group with ambitions to grow to £100 million turnover through both acquisitions and organic growth. So welcome to the show, John. Great to have you on.
Morning, Philip. Morning, Curtis.
Morning.
It's great to be on again. It's been a little while. I did get a little bit worried, Curtis, when I saw your LinkedIn post on Wednesday night. I thought you'd found someone else.
Oh, the man of mystery.
The man of mystery. We were teasing.
Yes.
But if I ever need an obituary written, I'm going to get you, Curtis. That was fantastic. Thank you.
An honour, John.
So how are things, John? I know you've been not relaxing, but recovering, should we say? So how are you recovering? You doing well?
No, I'm doing well, thank you. It has been gently frustrating. The first day is fine, but it's now been a week since the operation, and I'm getting a little bit stir crazy. I think the boys are getting bored of me calling, and video conferencing seems to be the future at the moment. So there's been a little bit more thinking time, a lot more analysing of some of the numbers that actually do come across your desk that might not get as much time spent on it, but they're getting thorough review. But no, I'm on the mend. Stitches out next week, so hopefully back in the car, driving around, seeing the boys again.
Excellent. Well, I know everybody's wishing you well, and I think, like you say, it's difficult because we know what happened last time that you were sat at home gardening and doing nothing, and came back in and started buying businesses and opening up car dealerships. But yeah.
But in fairness, it was a lot. I was still in the same office, and I was still working a lot of numbers. In fairness, I will miss my little scooter though.
Euro scooter.
Are you building up some speed on that scooter now, John?
I am. I might post. I'll tell you what. I'll do a little post that my youngest daughter did, which has got a slow down children around sign on the door. I might be enjoying that. I just occasionally have to get up and have a little zoom around on it. To tell you the truth.
Has anyone put a little Volvo logo on it yet or anything?
Well, there was a bit of. I did speak to Christian, the MD at Volvo, and he was talking about getting some Polestar upgrades to it. They haven't quite arrived yet.
Some side steps and an upgrade, power upgrade, yeah. So, I mean, like you say, it's an absolute pleasure to have you back on, and it has been far, far too long since you've been on, and I know that you've always been there, ready and willing to come back on. So, welcome back, and it's, like I say, it's a pleasure. So, let's rewind a little bit back to November 17 and back to when you launched Waylands, and it's now, this is less than 18 months after the sale of the Ridgeway Group to Marshall's Motor Group for 106 million. So what prompted you to launch the new dealer group so soon in what's been described recently as a consolidated marketplace?
Yeah, no, and I guess the flippant answer was I don't really have many hobbies, and my lovely wife did come to me and did say one of us is going back to work full time. I thought it'd probably best be me. Yeah. I think in reality I had a good 3 months off, and a little bit of that is getting your head back together, because you go from working 100%, emails, phones, meetings, to suddenly nothing. Literally packing up the desk and going home. So there's a little bit of getting the head back together, and then actually just spending time round about the family, and getting to some of those things that you don't get the opportunity to. So, in reality, it was those 3 months, but. Then I'm 40, I was 47 at the time. I'm thinking I'm too young to retire. I adore the industry. They made the point. I've been involved in the industry since, 1990, all my working life. And I did believe there was a real opportunity, despite, some of the stresses that the industry has been experiencing, despite the consolidation, to build, a business based round about my values. And continue to work with the people that I really enjoy spending time with, people that can make a difference, in the motor retail sector. So those were all the reasons why I guess I wanted to get back in.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to have you back in, obviously, as well.
Thank you.
Now, John, tell us what was the attraction of launching a Volvo group, and how closely did you work with the brand? Because I guess in retrospect, going with Volvo looks like an obvious choice, but back in 2017, I get, the XC90 was probably the only new vehicle we'd seen for a long time. It had been through a period of stagnation on the product front. It was under new ownership with Geely. So, what looks obvious now wasn't so obvious back in 2017. So really the question is, why Volvo then, and why Volvo going forward? Because I understand you're at the Volvo dealer conference recently, so you've got a good feel for what's coming out from the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in fairness, at Ridgeway, we did know the brand, and we had met with them over the years. We just couldn't find the right opportunity to work with Volvo. So it wasn't, certainly wasn't a cold relationship. We were just looking for the right opportunity for Volvo with Ridgeway. So, there was already a level of knowledge around the brand. And then we attended the Burst show from Volvo in 2016 in Gothenburg, showcased all the new product that was coming through. And we were genuinely excited. It was spectacular, and it was so successful in actually getting you to buy into what the brand stands for and a belief in the product that was coming through. The boxy but good tag that's sort of been around Volvo for so long, was genuinely blown away by those few days that we spent in Gothenburg, and they then we're seeing some of the product that showed now. It's all been delivered. But I also was looking at the values of Volvo, and if you talk about Volvo, I think people have always spoken about comfort and safety, but genuinely from day one they've spoken about environmental concerns and how they've moved in terms of electrification and autonomy. It feels like they're the right brand for our times. The world's moved towards Volvo, rather than Volvo try to chase where the world's going. And I think that the other part is around organisation. It's not a big organisation, and what I've enjoyed is how open the leadership team is. So if you need to talk to Christian, the MD, or Matt, the commercial director, they're available. And whether you do it on an informal basis, they organise the regional roadshows, they organise the conferences, and they're there. They're available, and they want to talk about the business, which is refreshing. It reminds me of some of the German brands in the 90s. When you could get around, you could talk to everyone, when you visited the head office. So that was great. I mean, and we were all re-energized. After the conference, we were lucky enough to have Håkan Samuelsson and Björn Arnwall came over, the leaders of the Volvo business, from a global perspective, to actually attend the conference, to take questions at the conference, to reassure us that actually we are a big business and we will get the product that we need, to pay for the investments that the Volvo dealers are making. Volvo UK have got a few exciting initiatives, coming through, around how we sell finance, around how we sell mobility to our customers. So beginning to talk to us around some key themes that will address some of the ownership challenges that may arrive in the medium to long term. So I think as a little recharge and a little boost, they hit the mark during the conference as well.
So just before we move on, talking about some of the sort of the growth plans for yourself, but so with that Volvo, does it? I get a sense that you feel like a true partner in terms of what Volvo are doing. Is that because you've obviously worked with other brands, and you mentioned some of the prestige brands back in the early 90s, the way they were then, and intimating that it was not necessarily the same now because of the size and the obviously the market share that those brands operate in both the UK and the international space. But do you feel that Volvo at that point where actually, they're on this growth plan, you feel like you're a true partner in part of their future strategy?
Yes, I do. And that's, I use the term refreshing, because you can be involved in as much or as little, but you don't have an excuse. I mean, one of the things that John Wakefield, was quite powerful when there was some difficulties on the NFDA surveys for Volvo. Just at a time when a lot of investment was being asked for and the product hadn't really arrived. And John was really open. Here's my mobile number, guys. He put it up at every regional roadshow, and that's not just investors. That's sales managers, after sales managers. Everyone who's involved in managing the retailers are there, and he's putting up his mobile phone number and saying, guys, if you've got a problem with something I'm doing, call me. I might not be able to fix it, but I can tell you what I'm doing about it. We might not agree, but I'll tell you why I'm doing about it. And that again is powerful, and that's continued on. And I haven't seen, any deviation from that so far. And I know there's problems. As businesses get bigger, they do become more, process driven. They do become more procedural. They just by their nature, they can't be as bespoke. But I enjoy that part of it, having that personal relationship. And I do believe it should be a partnership. And I think that's where we can be stronger than some of our competitor brands, because if we're truly talking, we can tell the guys making the decisions what's really happening at the coalface. And if they've got that action, then hopefully they can either bring in more tactical, more support, drive sales, or help us through some of the difficulties than another brand that might be waiting on a composite to be delivered.
Yeah. So you feel valued really in part of their plan and have a say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking back to yourself, so Reading was very quickly followed by in 2018 by acquisitions in both Newbury and Swindon, and an all new site followed in Oxford last summer. I think we've constantly spoke about it. I think we had podcast after podcast talking about Volvo and the Waylands growth. No, but obviously that representation across the M4 corridor. So with 4 sites now, how much was obviously scalable growth through acquisition part of the business, and in terms of when you planned, and obviously lessons learned from your Ridgeway has proved useful, because tell us a little bit about that sort of the 5-year plan, because you've obviously got a 5-year plan to achieve 100 million turnover, and when did that clock start to tick?
Okay, I think this is one that I can talk about for quite a long time, so I'll try. I've done several presentations on this, but I'll try to keep it as short and sweet as possible. I thought, without doubt, scale is important. It allows us to buy things cheaper, allows us to be competitive with the biggest boys if we can just get to a certain scale. And actually, I've been able to utilize some of, my past contacts to help me get some of those benefits quicker than maybe the size of the business would have demanded. But the other benefit of scale is about spreading some of your group investments. That allows you to drive quality and value into the brand. And if you've got one, if you've got one site and you've got a group after sales manager, then you can only divide it by 1. If you've got 4, you can divide his cost by 4. This was where with Ridgeway that actually there was some wins that we tried to push really hard on, defining culture. We talk about performance, we talk about honesty, we talk about integrity, we talk about caring. Some words that you'd see in most people's vision and values, but actually then going out and living it. We talk about finding and keeping the best talent, in a time when we've got the rise of internet, then actually when customers do come into our businesses, they've got to feel special and valued. And it's the team, it's our people that deliver it. Fantastic facilities that people want to spend time in. And I think Volvo have really nailed it with their VRE. It's a lovely mix of some of that Germanic, impressive as you walk in, but then you get into the lounge and it's lovely, it's intimate, it's comfortable, and it's not as expensive as other, corporate identities have been. The other, I guess, keeping it local, so that actually you do visit. If dealerships are far away, you're not driving past them, you don't visit them quite so much. And that was one of the things at Ridgeway we worked really hard on. We didn't take opportunities outside that sort of 90 minutes drive from Newbury. If you're visiting dealerships, you're actually seeing what's really happening. You can motivate, you can coach. The teams can see how you talk to people. The teams can see how you work. And it's working with the brands, and working with a brand that reflects that as well, and working with brands that would reflect that. I think the final part is just the absolute clarity of what we're there for. We're there to actually drive financial performance by looking after our customers better than anybody else, by looking after our employees better than everybody else. And I've been really lucky. And one of the things I did, I did learn at Ridgeway was when you've got that talent, make sure you keep them. So, we've invested in general managers, accountants, admin at every site, so the sites can stand alone. We've got, I think, one of the best after-sales talents in the industry with Richard Spencer, who should not be working in a Foresight Volvo dealership, as my after-sales director. We've got the incredibly young and talented James Smullen, who will hate that I've said young, but there you go, hate it, Eric and the guys on sales. We've got a really great team. So as we do grow, what we don't get is those wobbles. When you do take on a new business, it does get a lot of the attention. And if you don't have the foundations and the structure behind you, it does cost you money. So we probably run a little bit heavier around about management as well, just to make sure that doesn't happen. But you get it back in spades if you can deliver the growth. So I think that's all the I guess the lessons. But what was that? The other part was
about your growth, I suppose. Your 5-year plan. Yeah.
We're making excellent progress. In 2018, we turned over 36 million. 2019, we'll report 87 million. So we are budgeting, we will break the 100 million this year. So to answer your question, we'll be 2 years ahead of that schedule. So part of my thinking time is, what does the next, 5-year plan look like for us? The profitability, is just as important as those big headlines. The turnover gets the headlines, but it's actually the profitability that allows us to continue on. And, if you look at, as our operating expenses have doubled during 19, profitability went up by 70%. So I'm really pleased that not only we're delivering on the top line, but we're actually delivering on the bottom line as well. And, to do the budgets this year, we've got to not just do double figures, we've got to do 23% on our turnover and close on a third on our profitability. But I really think that we've established a business that is big enough, does have enough talent, and we're beginning to see that. We were lucky enough to win a Retailer of the Year award and a Used Car award at the recent National Volvo awards. We're increasing, we took on some businesses that were actually not in the best of shape. Looking at Volvo's balanced scorecard, and now we're, a very strong performer. We've got two of our dealerships are now top quartile, and all are above average. So, we've turned a business, we've turned local businesses into performing businesses, and we should reap that more in 2020. So, we're well on plan, and I guess my job is to now come up with, what does the next 5-year plan look like?
Yeah.
And John, factoring into that, I mean, you talk a lot about scalability and the scalability of the group. You are at the moment a soulless Volvo group, but when you were at Ridgeway, you obviously built a lot of close relationships with a number of different OEMs. So, but my question is, would you at some stage consider representing other brands? And if so, would you stay in that premium end of the market?
I think the quick answer is never say never. Right now we're in a great place. Waylands is working with a great brand which is enjoying a huge amount of success. I look at Volvo this year, and with a following wind and the product arriving, we could be doing 60,000 cars this year in the UK. So you're talking a business that's growing, that I enjoy working with. So why would I want to, look outside of it? In truth, with Ridgeway, one of the reasons, we could talk all day about having diversified portfolios, but one of the reasons why we looked outside of Volkswagen Group was they didn't want to give us any more opportunities. We were becoming too valuable at a time when there was lots of acquisitions going on. So I think sometimes we can be as strategic as we want, but we are also opportunistic, and we've got to recognise and play with the cards that we are dealt. So I guess as long as we can continue to grow the business and continue to grow with a successful brand, then I'm very, very happy.
Yeah, I mean, again, 11.7% increase last year. Again, slight increase in January this year. You can see that direction, can't you? That Volvo.
Yeah, and again, as a slight increase. And we're really a retail. We're still mainly a retail brand. We are growing corporate, in a retail market that was down quite sharply. Yeah. So I think the mood music is still in the right place. And if you look at what we've got coming as a brand, and I know when you start talking around about 2020, XC40, we've been constrained in terms of supply on that vehicle in 2018 and in 2019. And we're talking about large increases for 2020. Now, if those cars arrive, and remember, we will have the only hybrid, petrol hybrid vehicle and plug-in hybrid vehicle, in that segment. We could do really, really well. And that's where I think some of our confidence is coming round about not only sales, but also in terms of profitability, because XC40 is still a car in demand. And, I know I've said this before, but I had the joy of working and seeing, the continued success round about Audi when they had TT, a car that just kept selling and was still desirable for years and years and survived, model changes and just came back stronger. We saw with Evoque, these cars do come along that just chime and just make sense. Yeah. And I get excited round about that car. If we can have a volume car like a 40 alongside 60 and 90, then we're in a great place. But I do understand that product cycles do come to an end. Brands do come and go. But in the short to medium, Volvo's looking a great place to be.
No, you're right. I mean, we're talking about that electrification in terms of the challenge for dealers and OEMs, and obviously that transition. And we know it's been accelerated through governmental legislation, European legislation currently as well for the next 12 months. But those that followed you on social media, not saying anything, Curtis, but those that do follow you in the social space, as you say, you got your new XC40 plug-in hybrid, and talking to Volvo dealerships, like you say, the XC40 has been a success. It just needs the supply, doesn't it? It's got the demand, it's got the appetite. You've now got the model lineup now with the plug-in hybrid, and that if you get that supply coming through in 2020, then that's really where some of the growth is really going to come from, and entering some of them sectors that you're not predominantly very strong in, like you say, very strong in private, but actually that XC40 gives you opportunities to let you into other areas, doesn't it?
Yeah, and of course. No, and you're absolutely right. Suddenly, we've got a car we can go to some of the, that will be in demand by some of the bigger fleets. And it's about getting the balance right, soaking up, the clear retail demand that there is, in the short term, versus building, another key revenue stream for the brand. But these are opportunities. These are great problems to have. And as long as we've got those cars coming through, and there's always reasons. Exchange rate. The UK. What we demand on our cars versus what globally is demanded. But we now need to see those cars. If Volvo want to get to where it really was to get to in the UK, we need to see the cars. When you've got your global chief exec saying the cars are coming, the European production will be going to the European market. It doesn't have to go anywhere else in the world. That gives you a lot more confidence. that this year should be our year.
Right. Speaking of which, the final question for you, John. Obviously, with Brexit, political and economic uncertainty, 2019 was a challenging year. January, we've had the figures. We know the market was down 7.3% in January, and in fact, the private element of that was down 14%. So, what's your take on how the car market will perform in Q1 and maybe for the rest of the year?
I think 2019 was challenging, difficult. It was a culmination. Whether you looked at some of the brands facing RDE, Brexit just going on, and it just damaged confidence month in, month out. And then general election at the end of the year, it does stop business. It stops business every time. It's an excuse to not buy. So I think from the start, middle, and the end of 2019 was tough. But what we did get was a decisive result. Whether you like him or loathe him, Boris got a result. The confidence is returning. I've been just running through some of our January figures. Our inquiry rate was up 17% on new and 37% up on used versus 2019. But conversion has also strengthened on new 2% and on used by 3%. So you've got a culmination of more inquiries and people more willing to actually commit. So it does feel better. We've done our January budget. We've got a good order bank for March. So I'm confident. I am confident for H1. And if you push me, I'd even say I'm confident for right the way through to September. The Q4 is the one that I wouldn't want to commit to. At that time, we'll have to see. And I think it's going to be around about Brexit again. It's going to be around about Europe. Will Boris have done the oven-ready deal? Will he have done it? Will he deliver it? If he can charm the Europeans into giving us a deal that's seen as satisfactory, then great news. We can then continue. If he doesn't, then that's another worry. I've always been more of an optimist. I'm more half empty.
That glass is always half full.
Yes, I'll take a good 6 months. I'm hopeful for a good 9 months. And then I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you in September. How's that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, like you say, I mean, generally the feeling is good. I mean, I think the challenge at the minute is supply, whether that's in the new car market or the used car market. Is, demand is there, activity is there, optimism is there. We've come into the new year with, a better feeling. Generally across we've seen the consumer confidence index rise from -14 in November, -11 December, and then -9 now in January. If that can stay where it is and continue to drop, then it's good news, and that should, like you say, it's that as we get towards that 12-month mark and uncertainty, depending on the deal, starts to set in. It remains to be seen, but we just need to do what we can in the meantime, don't we?
I think for as dealers, and we've got to make sure that we're taking away some of the confusion around, electric and hybrid, because it's in the news. Oxford's closed down some more of its the city centre from December. So it's going to be more and more in the news, and we've got to help take away the confusion. What's the difference between a plug-in, a mild, a full electric? What's that mean to me? And I think that's an area where, as an industry, we've got to work really, really hard, because the cars are coming. What we don't know is where the customer going to rush to it, or are they going to shy away from it? And we've got to manage that. We've got to manage that as an industry.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it all means thanks for joining us today, John. It's been an absolute pleasure, very insightful, really open and engaging. We need to make sure that you come back on sooner than last time. It's been far too long, as I said at the start of the interview. So, we wish you the best for recovery, get you back on your feet again and back in the business, and not just on Skype and email and social media, but get you back in the business again, and wishing you all the well for the growth of Waylands. I mean, it's some fantastic results there, and the next 5 years is going to be great for you, I presume, looking like that. So all the best, and thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you. Right, I'm off to see Bargain Hunt. Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Carter.
Speak to you soon.
Thanks, John.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
What a fantastic interview.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, John on absolute cracking form there.
Yeah.
What a business. I mean, he's achieved the 5-year plan to turn over 100 million in 3 years.
Yeah.
So, it's impressive going there. But it is fascinating, this whole Volvo subject of Volvo, because it is the right brand at the right time. And, talking to John there, he's as enthusiastic about the brand now as he was at the beginning of Waylands, and it sounds like there's plenty more in the pipeline there.
But what is interesting is not unrealistic that their strategies do change. Focus changes from the brand, so it wouldn't answer your question, and probably we probably didn't expect an answer. But the fact that he is open, at the minute, Volvo is a good brand to be partnering with. He understands that relationship. He knows the brand. He's building it, and he's doing it in a very strategic way. And like you say, to go from a 36 million turnover to 87 million turnover between 2018 and 2019, and he's always going to hit his 100 million by the end of 2020, as he said. But he's with that right brand. He's keeping control. He's got the right strategy in place about his people, and where he's looking across the M4 corridor there. So, fantastic, and you can see more coming from John in a very short period of time, I expect.
Yeah, I think what we can safely say is that that there will be OEMs that have got Waylands on their radar.
Yeah.
So there must be a lot of interest there.
Yeah. I mean, jam-packed show we've had this morning, then, Curtis. So talking about new market, the new van market, the changes from the political agenda in terms of bringing forward that ban of petrols, diesels, and including hybrids forward to 2035, and some of the appointments. There's changes at that top end again this week.
Well, yes. I mean, there's 3 major, new appointments there, which, we can go a couple, 2 or 3 months without mentioning a new appointment, and we've had 3 in 1 week. So, lots and lots going on this week. So, we are doing more interviews, and we're actually setting up the next interview, which we can reveal more about over the coming weeks. But once again, many thanks to John for coming onto the show this morning. So that's basically all from us. You've been listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast in association with eBay Motors Group, the only weekly podcast serving the car retailing sector. So that's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. Thanks for listening.